Hey everyone, it's Mr. Wildboy94. I hope you're doing well today. I'm going to do a book review for a book that I read when I was in Tennessee on vacation recently. I read a few books while I was out. I just finished up another one. I will review that as well that I also read out there. But I want to start off with the first two books of this particular trilogy. And eventually I'll get to the third book very soon. That first book is called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz, and the illustrator is Stephen Gamel or Gamel. I can never remember how to say his name. This is an absolute classic. It came out in the very early 80s, and it's brilliant. Again, there's a trilogy of these books, and in my opinion, this might very well be the best one. I am going to rank the books at some point, but we'll get there when we get there. Look at this cover, man. Look at this clown made out of like a hill. It's like a tree or something. I don't know. It scares the crap out of me. Every time I've ever seen this cover, it's made me very, very nervous. Now, again, there are three of these, and basically, if you don't know what these are, they are pretty much a horror anthology. They have some funny stories in some of these books, particularly this one. And sometimes those are fine, sometimes they're not. But most of the time, they're trying to scare you as much as they can. And there's a lot to be said about these books. They essentially are 3 to 5 page long stories. Some can get to like 7 pages, but typically they're short enough that you can knock them out just one after another. The books fly by. This particular book is only about, how long? It's only about 90 pages long. And it has a lot of home runs in here. A lot of these stories are basically retellings, not all of them, but quite a few of them are retellings of urban legends like The Hook, for example, about the young man and the young woman who get in a car, decide to go up to the top of a mountain to do some hanky-panky, and while they're up there they hear a radio broadcast saying that there's some kind of lunatic with a hook for a hand that's escaped from an asylum. He's walking around, nobody can find him, and then they start to hear a scraping down the side of their car. The girl says she wants to go home. The guy takes her home hanky-panky-less. And when he gets her there, they see a scrape and also a hook hanging from the door of the passenger side, from the girl's side of the car. Creepy stuff. I love stuff like that. I love things like Bloody Mary. I'm a big fan of urban legends. And I think this really kicked that off for me when I had a back injury back in 2018, and I read all three of these books for the first time when I bought this hardcover copy right here. I love this hardcover copy. It's what I actually took to Tennessee with me when I was reading these books. All three are in here. It's the original artwork. There is a release, a modern day release, that has different artwork from what Stephen Gamel's art was. It's very childish, very ugly. Not a fan of it at all. I'll be honest with you. If you have a kid you don't want to scare that bad, you can show that to him. There's also book number 2, More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, again with a great, great cover here. I really love it. I like the red and black aesthetic. You don't see many books do that nowadays. And here's the third book, Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones, with another creepy face-filled cover here. Look at that. Yeah, creepy stuff. I'm going to talk about all these books at separate times, but for right now, we're going to focus on just the original book. Now, where do I even begin with this? Alvin Schwartz's writing style is very succinct, it's very short, it's very subtle, and for some reason it's almost like a joke. You have the telling of it, and then you have the punch at the very end. One of the things I'm not a fan of with that is that the first section of the book is pretty much jump scares. It's a lot of this book, as a matter of fact, in that first section especially, are kind of campfire tales. You sit down with some friends at a campfire, you start reading these stories to them, or if you can get them memorized, they're pretty short, you might be able to do that pretty well. I'm terrible, I can't do things like that, but you might be able to. And then at the end of those stories, you jump out and scream, ah! You know, it's literally written at the end of these short stories. Yeah. But as you kind of go along throughout the book, you get other stories that are not like that. They're just straight up creepy stories to scare the reader, mixed with Stephen Gamel's amazing artwork. Just absolutely brutal. Let me show you my personal favorite, if I can find it fairly fast. Here's a great example of one that I love a lot. This is not my favorite, but this is a really good one for a story called What Do You Come For? Look at this. Look at this artwork, man. How creepy and detailed is that? It's almost like a splotchiness mixed with an actual like sketch style. I don't know how to explain it. It's just there's something about the art that every time I read this book it creeps me out so much. Now there is one big flaw to this book for me. Not that it's really the stories themselves, but there is one particular section of this book I'm less favorable towards. It's pretty much a comedy section. It's supposed to be funny. And this being a kid's book, it is kind of a middle grade audience, but adults and teenagers and everybody who ever reads this, elderly people, all of you can get something out of this book. I read it for the first time, as I said, in 2018, roughly, I'm bad at math, that's what, 5 years ago? I read it for the first time as a full-grown adult. I was about 23-ish, 22. It scared the crap out of me. I was reading this at 2 and 3 o'clock at night because I couldn't work because of my back injury. And I was reading Goosebumps on the side too. I was getting back into Goosebumps, starting to collect those, And this series scared me so much that now I'm a massive collector, excuse me. I buy pretty much everything I can of scary stories to tell in the dark. But the section I remember back then being my absolute least favorite in this book, and pretty much all of these books when they have them, is the comedy section. It's supposed to be kind of creepy-ish, eerie-ish stories to unnerve you, but also make you laugh. And I think I laugh at maybe one of them out of like the 8 in that particular section. Out of like a 50-page span or so, not 50 pages, about 20 pages, I might laugh maybe once at all of those stories. It tries very hard in that section. I think it really doesn't succeed, but the stories themselves, it's not that they should have been funny. That section title should have just been eliminated. I think it should have just been outright scary stories, just plain and simple, because they were still creepy. They still maintained an atmosphere that this book typically has in every section, in every tale for that matter. But some, they are a little cringy when it tries to be jokey, but it still was fun. It was well written. I enjoyed it. For something so short, and for something to be, again, about 90 pages, it's amazing to me how much as an adult this has affected me. This affected me a lot more than a lot of books I've read out there. This and Goosebumps both. There are genuinely some scary books out there from both of these franchises. And it's sad that this is done. Like, this has been done for a long time, since the 90s. It was a very controversial book and series when they came out, understandably so, because of some of the artwork in here from Stephen Gammell. I don't want to show you the best of the best because they are absolutely creepy. I like every single piece of artwork in this book. I think all of it. It brings that short, very well-written story that Schwartz put together, and it makes it even better by taking great art and great stories and blending them into one freaking great book. I love this book. It is so good. It's creepy. Again, it's not perfect because of the comedy section, but I don't even know if I would take off any points in my rating at the end of the video because of how much I like each of those stories. Even so, they weren't bad. They just weren't funny like that section had depicted them to be. But overall, I think there's some great stuff in here. I want to read off some of my favorites in this book. Let's see, we have What Do You Come For? That's a really good one. I showed you the art for that. We have Old Woman All Skin and Bones, which is actually a song that I did not realize was a song that my class and I sang back in elementary school. I went many years, all the way to 2018. Over 20 years. Well, not over, but you know what I mean. I wasn't in school when I was born. I went many years, like almost 20, essentially trying to figure out what this song was that we sang back in the day. And as I read this song in 2018, when I read this book for the first time, I thought, you know what? I think that's the song. And I looked it up. Old Woman All Skin and Bones. It's an old folklore type of scary story song thing, and it's creepy. There's many variations out there, but it always spooked me. I remember my elementary school teacher screaming at my class and I at the end of the song because you're supposed to yell boo at the end of it, and it always made me jump. You can find that song here on YouTube in case you want to have a blast from the past like myself. Let's see, what's some other stuff? The Thing was creepy. The Haunted House is probably my favorite story in here, starting on page 29. It's fantastic. It's so eerie. Let's see, The Wendigo in the 3rd section of the book. The Wendigo is super, super spooky. I really like that one, about a hunter taking basically a Native American, I can say Indian, I'm Red Cherokee. Basically, he and this Indian go out in the woods looking to go hunting and whatever, and they start to encounter a Wendigo, and the wind, when it blows, seems to be saying that Indian's name, and it scares him, pretty much has to leave the hunter out there by himself. I told you a majority of the story here, but dude, great story. I love it for like an 8 or 9 page, probably the longest story in this book. It's classic. You can't go wrong with it. Let's see. The Dead Man's Brain is kind of a game that you can play with, younger kids if you have like a Halloween party. I think I've done something similar to this back when I was a kid. I think somebody had a class party at school or something, and we had this kind of thing done. Basically, you'll like have a dark room where the kids can't see anything, but they put their hands in like different plates and bowls and stuff. They might put their hand in one bowl and it'd be like 2 peeled grapes. It's supposed to be the dead man's eyeballs. It's like each part of each bowl that they are supposed to feel their hands around, and it's supposed to be something that makes them kind of gross out. Like one bowl over here has noodles in it. It could be spaghetti, and you could say, oh, that's his intestines or his brains or something. It's kind of cool. I kind of like it, and I think it would scare kids. It would have traumatized me if I was in the dark and had that, but yeah. Again, some of the urban legends we cover in here. High beams, about the woman going home at night. There's a guy driving a truck behind her that keeps flashing his high beams. He's kind of following her, scares her. Really good story if you haven't read that or heard of it before. Let's see. The White Satin Evening Gown is a really good one. The Babysitter, When a Stranger Calls. If you've seen those movies, that's what that original urban legend is based on. Really creepy, really fun. I really like this. I actually think in that section of comedy, by the way, one of my favorite stories that the book actually has is the last story. Is called The Ghost with the Bloody Fingers. To be a comedy story, it's genuinely just creepy. It's not funny. It's kind of a cringy ending, but man, the story itself is really spooky. But with that being said, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark original book, book number 1, it's classic, it's wonderful, I recommend it so highly if you haven't read this before. It's fantastic, and again, if you're an adult and you've never heard of this, or you're a big horror fan and you've never read this or never even tried it, you think Goosebumps is too childish, this is not that. This is not written like a Goosebumps book. This is very different. It's very well done. And I think it's extremely fun, especially for this time of the year. We're in fall, getting ready to go into October of 2022. It's a great time to jump into this series. You can read all 3 books so fast. I promise you, you'll love it. At the end of the book, there's a lot of notes and little trinket of informations about different things about the urban legends, where the influence of some of these tales came from. That's kind of cool if you like that. But man, if this doesn't sell you on this book, the art should. Anyway, when it comes to Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin, Schwartz, and Stephen Gammell, if I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, even though I think it has some few flaws that I don't think really affect anything, aside from that comedy section, head, subhead, whatever you want to call it, that shouldn't be in here. But the stories themselves I liked. If I had to rate it for pretty much no flaws, aside from that comedy section label, I'd give it a 5 out of 5 stars. I love it. I think it's a great read. It's really spooky, and it's fun, and I'll never, ever, ever forget this. I've bought this book so many times since I read it back in 2018, again as a collector, that I'm glad I own all these different versions of it, because it's cool. It's fun. I like that. Anyway, what are your thoughts, guys? Put them down below about Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, the whole series of this book. What's your favorite story in this book? What's your favorite piece of art in this book? I'd love to hear all that down below, too. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Put all that down below. Thank you guys for watching. God bless you all, and goodbye.